So we're here tonight for the final webinar in our Globe Educator 1 Week Pacing Guide series. Tonight we have the awesome topic of mosquito habitats. I'm super excited about this one. It has a little place in my heart. For those of you who don't know me, I am Angie Rizzi. I work at NASA Langley Research Center on the education team. And I work on the GLOBE project as well as another project called My NASA Data. But I was a middle school educator for about a dozen years. And for the last several years, I used GLOBE in the classroom with my students. And it was so empowering and impactful for them that I just became a huge supporter and was really happy to be able to join the team and help bring these resources to other people. We're going to go over the elements of the pacing guide as well as just the mosquito habitats particular sequence. We'll have the opportunity to test out an activity, and then we'll talk about implementing and taking it further. And for taking it further, we have the pleasure of Dr. Rusty Lowe joining us this evening, the true expert on this topic. And so she'll be helping me out with that, which I greatly appreciate. So don't put anything in the chat if you're driving, but if you could answer this question, I'd like to know if you typically get, or we don't even have to do it in the chat. Let's just say, do you get mosquitoes where you live, and are they active now?
Hi, Angie. This is Josh. I'm in West Virginia, and we do get mosquitoes, but they are not active now.
Okay, I am also in West Virginia, and it's too cold here still. But yes, we do get them. But there are some parts of our country that we'll see that are probably already experiencing the mosquitoes this year. And we'll even probably see that in one of our activities later on. Okay. So I'm going to turn my camera off just to make it easier to transition here between the slides. So all of our pacing guides have the same basic sections, okay? And they are also all written so that they involve at least one GLOBE observation. And we made the conscious decision to utilize the GLOBE program's GLOBE Observer app for these observations so that you don't necessarily have to be a GLOBE trained teacher in order to use it. They all also have some at least one hands-on activity and at least one My NASA Data activity. And so there's, a variety of ways for students to engage with the subject and for us to progress through the content. Each of the sections I'm going to go through, but we do have an overview. We go over the standards that are supported, the background information, the 5-day sequence of activities, and additional resources. So the overview section of the pacing guides all look kind of like this, although you'll have what is, the name of the pacing guide, mosquito habitat is the phenomenon. Every pacing guide has a guiding question. So this is the sort of anchoring question that we have that every day's activity touches back to. And so for this guide, our guiding question is, what conditions are favorable for mosquitoes? The phenomenon is mosquito habitat. This is grade level 6 through 12. That being said, there's absolutely no reason that this couldn't be done with younger students. There's one activity in particular that you might want to swap out, but because of the one activity with the graphs, we aligned it to these standards. I see someone has their hand up. Anna?
Nope, that's an accident. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no worries.
Put it down. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We also have a contact if you have questions about this topic. And so Cassie Sofing, who is actually our host tonight for this Zoom meeting, is someone who is an expert on this content as well, and you can reach out to her. And then we have this section here for further investigation. What can you do if you really like this and you want to take it further? You could look at the Mosquito Habitat Mapper app and do more with it, which Rusty will describe later. You can become a Globe trained teacher. You can access our other pacing guides. I did already put that link in the chat, but if we need it again, we can put it in there. So this section is similar for every guide, just the details are different. And then we align to standards. And so you can just see that we do look at the performance expectations, the disciplinary core ideas, the science and engineering practices, and the cross-cutting concepts. That being said, we are supporting these. We are not necessarily completely fulfilling these. And then we have a background information section. And the background information section is really just to help the teacher become familiar with some of the content. Now, the benefit of these webinars is we give a little extra information that isn't in the guide. And so that's what I'm going to do. This video I'm going to play is going to describe why and how NASA would be studying mosquitoes, which might seem like a strange thing for NASA to study.
In the Amazon rainforest, few animals are as dangerous to humans as mosquitoes that transmit malaria. In the Western Hemisphere, 90% of all malaria cases occur in the Amazon, but it's not spread evenly across the tropical region. While malaria has decreased in the Brazilian Amazon, the disease has been steadily increasing in the Peruvian Amazon. In the past 5 years, Peru has had on average the second highest rate in the South American continent. Despite having interventions such as bed nets and indoor sprays, challenges still lie in identifying where to send resources before malaria outbreaks occur and spread quickly. Now, scientists are attempting to tackle this challenge using NASA satellites.
Our project in the Amazon is trying to understand the way malaria is transmitted in a tropical environment.
We know that malaria risk is associated with certain environmental conditions that we can detect from satellite.
To understand what environmental conditions to look for, it helps to know how malaria spreads in the Amazon. Malaria is caused by a parasite called Plasmodium, and it's transmitted to humans when mosquitoes carrying the parasite feed on your blood. There are roughly 40 species of malaria-transmitting mosquitoes worldwide, but in the Amazon, the Anopheles darlingi species is most responsible for spreading malaria. The key to this study is predicting where the darlingi mosquito breeding sites are with NASA satellites. The project is using a model called the Land Data Assimilation System, or LDAS, and this gets input from NASA satellites that provide information on precipitation, temperature, soil moisture, and land cover. This informs scientists where mosquito breeding sites are likely to form.
Mosquitoes need rainfall to form their breeding sites in puddles and ephemeral ponds. Rainfall also influences soil moisture. That will be important to vegetation. It will also change the humidity conditions near the surface where mosquitoes are breeding and living. Rainfall also eventually makes its way into the river, and a lot of river discharge will mean that there's more breeding sites along the banks for mosquitoes.
There are strong patterns of malaria throughout the year, but these patterns aren't consistent. As well as changes from season to season, global effects such as El Niño and climate change can disrupt where mosquitoes breed. Another factor that NASA satellites can detect is changes in land.
The conversion of forest to non-forest is the most important change that we worry about for malaria control and the detection of hotspots.
In Peru, land is cleared for activities such as agriculture, logging, and mining. And studies have found that cleared land in this region increases the number of malaria-transmitting mosquitoes. Changes in the land doesn't just influence where mosquitoes are, it also influences where humans are, and this is a key component in this study.
One thing that we've learned in this project is just how important it is to consider human movement when thinking about malaria risk.
People work on land that is used for agriculture, logging and mining, so that increases the amount of human traffic to that area.
Where people meet malarial mosquitoes, that's where you get high risk for transmission.
Figuring out where people are getting infected forms the crux of predicting malaria. Peru currently measures how many malaria cases are being detected in health posts, but this isn't always where true malaria outbreaks are occurring.
People are not necessarily being diagnosed where they were infected with malaria. They could be getting infected where they're working, which could be 100 miles away.
To incorporate this factor, the study is combining the LDAS data with models that give estimates about where people are travelling based on studies of seasonal employment. The study will predict where malaria outbreaks will occur 12 weeks ahead of time and help the country send resources to specific regions efficiently. While the project is focused on malaria, scientists say it can adapt to other diseases such as Zika and Leishmania. Precipitation and other environmental conditions are key factors in how diseases spread, and with NASA satellites, scientists are better understanding how diseases are interacting with a changing planet. In the Amazon rainforest, few
So hopefully that gave you an idea of why NASA would be interested in mosquitoes. And obviously, since the mosquitoes themselves are too small to be seen from space, how they can do these studies and what kinds of other parameters they're looking at. And so we talked about satellites. I just want to point out that NASA does have a variety of different platforms that we can put instruments on. And these include the satellites as well as the International Space Station and the CubeSats. And then as we get a little closer to Earth, we have things like stratospheric balloons and tethered balloons. And something that we at NASA Langley are particularly proud of are our airborne projects, where we put instruments actually on aircraft and fly those. We might do those to calibrate instruments or to do localized testing and get more detailed information than we can get with satellites, or we might do it to confirm satellite measurements. We have UAVs and ground-based instruments. And then we also have, if you notice here, smartphones and citizen science. And this is where the GLOBE program and the Globe Observer app can come into play. And the reason that this is particularly important is because while satellites are really good at getting the big picture, we need to fill in some details. So even as they spoke about in that video that they're getting the big picture from the satellites, but the people might be moving around. And so they were supplementing that with some seasonal employment data. We like to supplement the satellite data with observations that people make from the ground. And while this picture has clouds in it, you can imagine that the observations that people would be making related to mosquitoes are certainly going to be filling in very fine details that the satellites cannot get. So it's very important and helpful information. I will be sharing out the link for the slides at the end, and this slide is really a placeholder for you to have links for our partner page, which has all of the pacing guides. And we've been putting the recordings of the webinars up there. It takes us a couple of weeks to process that, but you should expect to see it up there soon. And then this is the link for the actual mosquito habitat pacing guide. So as we move into the 5-day sequence of activities, keep in mind this is a suggested sequence. You are welcome to modify it as meets your own needs. The first day is building a mosquito trap. It's really a pretty simple thing to do. There's a picture here of one. You just need a 2-liter bottle and a couple of simple things, some netting to cover the top so that the eggs can fall down in and the mosquitoes can't escape, something to rough up the surface so that the eggs will stick. water, and there's a great video here that talks about how to build the trap. And you can do some experiments like, hey, what if I have a water that's just plain, or I put some kind of nutrients in the water? What if I cover it with different colors of paper on the outside, or place the traps in different locations? So you can see how you could turn this into a controlled experiment. But the guiding question, or the connection back to the guiding question, is which part of the trap is also found in a natural mosquito habitat? So hopefully the students are going to identify the standing water and possibly nutrients. Then on day 2, there is this mosquito habitats and hideouts game. And there are actually a couple of different variations on this. So there is a bingo version, and there are bingo cards linked in the guide. They're beautiful illustrations and all kinds of markers and everything you need to play bingo. But another version of the game is also to kind of have them draw it out. So it's almost like a Pictionary version of the game as well. So it's really fun and really engaging, and it helps the students become familiar with different kinds of habitats, and in particular, some of these kind of man-made habitats, right? Like some trash or water storage jugs, or flower pots or things like that. So the connection back to the guiding question is, which mosquito habitats might be in your area? And can you think of any other habitats not included in this activity? So by this point now, they've built a trap and they have explored some habitats. So they're ready to go out and use the Globe Program's Globe Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper tool. On the next slide, I'll show a video for how to use this tool. The connection to the guiding question is, were you able to eliminate any possible mosquito habitats? Now, this is one of the reasons that I particularly really like this topic, because when you think about students wanting to have a positive impact on their communities, just by doing this process and identifying mosquito habitats, any of those habitats where the standing water can safely be emptied, they can do that, and they can eliminate a mosquito habitat and have a positive impact on their community. Of course, they should only make observations if they can do so safely and legally, and make sure that they only go on property that they're allowed to go on. But this is a great app. Now, there is more to the app. You can just identify habitats, and you can take it further and look at larvae, but this pacing guide does not incorporate that, the larvae part. So I'll share this video. So you can see that it's pretty easy to use the app and make the observation. And I hope you noticed at the end where the observer dumped out the water and basically did something to help their community. Now on day 4, this is the activity that is in MyNASA data. And we can link out to it if people would like to. But what we have here are 2 climagraphs, one for Memphis, Tennessee, and one for Moline, Illinois. Now they are at the same longitude, and Moline is further north than Memphis. And so we have these data from 2020 that show the average daily precipitation each month, as well as the monthly average surface temperature. The connection to the guiding question is assuming that there is enough precipitation or standing water, what temperatures are necessary for I'm probably not going to say this right, but this particular species of mosquito to emerge.
Yeah, it's Culex pipiens, not too hard.
Okay, thank you. So if I link out to the activity, there is some background information, and it does tell the students that the temperature needs to be above 12.5 degrees Celsius for the mosquitoes to emerge. And then they have the graphs here that they can look at, and there are just a few questions. The questions are, which month do you think the Culex pipiens emerged in Memphis, Tennessee in 2020? So we can look here, and when is it above 12.5? So we have March, and then the same for Moline, and we're all the way into May for Moline. And so then the question would be, what might explain the differences? Well, as I mentioned before, Moline is further north, so likely it is warming up later due to its location. What do you think would happen if the temperatures increase by 2 degrees in each location? So I thought this was kind of neat. And if you go down, to the month before for Memphis, even if you increased, you would still by 2 degrees, you'd still be below 12.5. And in Moline, if you increased from 10 to 12 in April, you'd still be below 12.5. So it likely wouldn't be a different month, but you would probably have more mosquito days. So that's an interesting point. And then how could this temperature increase impact human health? And hopefully they would note that perhaps there might be some more disease spread if there were more mosquito days. So this activity is out there, and it's a great little practice for them to look at a climograph with a real world application and to practice their graph reading skills and data literacy. The last day is another video, and remember the video we watched in the beginning, I showed you that for the background information, and it is in our additional resources, but that's not part of the pacing guide for the students. They have a different video, which is in MyNASA data. It's El Nino and the spread of human disease. Connecting back to our guiding question is, how can changes in mosquito habitats affect human health? And we can just watch this super interesting video. Here we go.
In 2015, a prolific outbreak of mosquito-borne dengue fever struck Southeast Asia. In fact, something was causing outbreaks to pop up all over the world. So what happened? 2 to 3 months earlier, the ocean water in the equatorial Pacific began to dramatically warm up, resulting in a cascading series of events that eventually led to disease outbreak worldwide. This warming event is commonly known as El Niño. The same El Niño that causes heavy rainfall in some parts of the world and droughts in others, the 2015-2016 El Niño was the strongest seen in 50 years. Here's what happened. The El Niño Southern Oscillation began showing signs of warming in early 2015. That led to changes in rainfall worldwide, which directly impacted land surface temperatures across all continents. In the case of Southeast Asia, the region actually got less than average rain, which caused the surface of the land to heat up and therefore produce drier conditions. That drew mosquitoes into populated urban areas containing open water they needed for laying eggs. As the air warmed, mosquitoes grew hungrier and reached sexual maturity faster, which meant more mosquito bites. The purple columns represent reported incidents of dengue fever. Mosquito-borne epidemics have a lag time of 2 to 3 months following these weather changes, which is why the dengue amplification period kicks in several months after land temperature begins heating up. The good news? Seasonal forecasts are an early warning system with the real potential to save lives. With an assist from scientists, countries can take strategic measures to prevent disease outbreaks, especially when they know they're coming.
So that kind of ties a nice little bow on it. But then the students, you can ask them how and why does NASA study mosquitoes? Now you could show that first video that we showed if you wanted to, but you could also just have them think about it. And of course, we use the satellites to study the moist conditions, the land change, the precipitation, the temperature, all of those things we've talked about. And the longer mosquito seasons and expanding ranges of the mosquitoes are two of the consequences from contemporary climate change. And the reason that NASA cares about this is because of the variety of diseases that are spread by mosquitoes that have an impact on human health. So we do have these additional resources, and we do try to indicate the audience for these resources. And so we've got online, hands-on, video, and reading links. And so you could certainly, if you wanted to do this for elementary, I think most of the activities are perfectly appropriate. You could always replace one of the days. You can also resequence them if you want. The primary reason that we have these additional resources is that we tried to make the very tough decision of if you only had 5 days to cover a topic, what could you do? And we realized that every situation is different and that teachers are professionals and they may want to do something a little differently. We just tried to give a starting point. And so kind of in my dream world, someone might do the pacing guide the first time when it's a new topic for them. They're getting new to Globe, and then maybe they never do it exactly the same way again. And that would be wonderful if they continue to use the resources. So with that being said, I'd like to talk just a little bit about implementing. I think I've seen some of you on the other webinars before. So we tried to make this as easy to implement as possible by doing the planning for you, by building in the assessment options each day. Of course, most of it's formative assessment, building on the story with those questions that connect back to the guiding question, and then giving you the flexibility with the additional resources. So hopefully this will be an easy thing to implement, and also providing consistency between the guides. The other guides are air quality or aerosols, cloud types with NASA Globe Cloud Gaze, the clouds and Earth's energy budget, plant phenology, trees and the carbon cycle, and urban heat island. All of these pacing guides use one of the tools in the Globe program's Globe Observer app. And with that, I will be happy to take questions in the chat, but I'd like to stop sharing and pass it over to Dr. Lowe so that she can talk about how you can take this a little bit further.
Okay, well, thank you, Angie. That was so interesting, and you have made it, I think, pretty seamless for people who don't have a lot of time but are really dedicated to teaching a lot about science. So this was really, really good. And what I wanted to do, Angie said that I could have a couple minutes at the end. And because I'm a scientist that really wants to see this data, I couldn't help but just try and do a little pitch and tell you a little bit more about the Mosquito Habitat Mapper app, just in case you'd like to use it in your classrooms. So I've put together a couple slides that I'm going to show you now. Okay, and can you all see those, please?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Great. I'll try not to take very much time because I know everybody's about ready for dinner or putting kids to bed or something. But, just like Angie said, what's really exciting about the Mosquito Habitat Mapper and why it has become so popular with teachers is that, just by using the app, you can make a difference in disease in your own community just by eliminating sites. So it's a tool that you can use for service learning in areas where there is insufficient funds to do a lot of municipal mosquito management. It's an environmental justice activity that students can do. And of course, you can learn just about all the science you want to know from a mosquito. So that's what's really exciting. The one thing that I wanted to point out here, if I can just, there we go, is that one thing that Angie, you did such a nice job about talking about the satellites and all the different data sources that scientists use to understand mosquitoes and when we find those, the times when they breed and where we can find them and how the El Nino affected them. And the reason I got involved in mosquitoes actually as a climate change scientist was that I think mosquitoes communicate about climate change really well. The mosquito seasons are starting earlier and ending later than ever before. Mosquitoes are hitchhiking rides on boats and planes and even in cars, moving into new regions. And because the temperatures have changed a little bit, they actually can thrive there. And we have a lot of these mosquitoes we call invasive species. These are species that were not there originally, but have gotten there from one way or another. And what's happening is once they arrive, they're found in one spot. And then as the climate is warming, their range expands poleward in both directions. So they really are a little character or an avatar that we can watch to tell us about climate change. These are the larvae that people are looking at, and they're really quite amazing. These are photos that Globe Observers took last summer. We had a photo challenge campaign, and you can see there's an incredible diversity of organisms there. And what I want to let you know as educators is that larvae are perfectly safe. They cannot transmit disease. They cannot bite. But because adults do, if you ever take kids outside, as you know, you want to have them protected by covering their skin with clothing, using mosquito repellent. Mosquitoes tend to be attracted to dark colors. So you want to probably try and wear light colors. So these are some of the ways you can protect yourself in the field. I just wanted to show you how incredible the data is that has come from people using the Mosquito Habitat Mapper. And if you took time to count this, and you don't have to, but there's about 34,000 different dots on this map. A lot of people in the eastern part of the United States, a lot of people in the coastal areas in Africa, and especially in Thailand, we're seeing a lot of participation in these areas. Where you see clusters, you are actually places where there is endemic disease, so people are really worried about it. Like in the US, it's West Nile virus. In Brazil, it's dengue. And in Africa, it's malaria. Different diseases for different places. So you saw this little video showing you the 4 steps. I just wanted to show you how pretty straightforward it is, how to use the app. We designed it that way. And the thing that I want to say, if there's one take-home message from my little point here, is that there are 3 ways that communities can protect themselves from mosquito-borne disease. And that is by surveillance, finding those habitats where the young mosquitoes develop into adult mosquitoes and getting rid of them. The getting rid of part is called mitigation. You dump out the water, you pick up the trash, you cover the water containers. And the third part is education. And so the Mosquito Habitat Mapper really excels in all 3 of these. So this is why this app has become very useful and has actually been adopted by the President's Malaria Initiative in Africa. So for the science that we need lots of data, lots of mosquito photographs, lots of locations, and I'm going to show you why. You know, the students are working and they're contributing to the NASA science that they just talked about in that video. Students are making observations and they're submitting data. And then scientists are using those mosquito images to detect the first appearance and range of new invasive species. For instance, in the US, we have 2 new invasive species in the last year. One is Aedes scapularis, the other is Aedes vittatus. Both of these critters are potential vectors of disease. They can carry diseases like dengue. So we're very worried about these. And we found them most recently in Texas and in Florida because they're moving northward. So that's a really important thing. The second thing is, remember, you need all the images that we have and how much we need. Well, if you want to develop artificial intelligence, if you wanted to train algorithms in order to do automatic recognition of species or classification of land cover, you need tons and tons. I mean, you need tens of thousands of photographs and images to train that algorithm. And there are scientists that are using our data in 6 different projects funded by NASA and the National Science Foundation. So everything the students collect is being used by science. And of course, the most important thing for us is that these data are available and they can be used by students for their own investigations, and they can create their own science outcomes. So I just wanted to tell a quick story because this is a brand new and very exciting story. There is a new invasive mosquito called Anopheles stephensi. It was originally found in Asia. It made its way to Ethiopia in 2012, and it's now becoming established in that area. And mosquitoes that are Anopheles mosquitoes are easy to recognize. This is a screenshot of the app. And most mosquitoes have breathing tubes that extend from the body. They might be long, they might be short and blunt, but the Anopheles mosquitoes, if you look at the tails of these mosquitoes here, you don't see any breathing tube. And that's because they have a very inconspicuous flat breathing siphon. So it's really important for us to see, can we find this invasive species? Because that's one thing that scientists want to know right now. Well, here is some exciting preliminary data from one of the National Science Foundation projects that I am working with scientists at the University of South Florida. And I was going through the observations of citizen scientists in Africa, helping my friends that are working with the President's Initiative. And I found these photos from this little place in Madagascar. And here is a photo of a mosquito, and here are some tires. And if you looked at this closely, what you would see is it doesn't have that breathing siphon. So it's an Anopheles mosquito. Now, the thing about mosquitoes that carry malaria in Africa is that they are all preferentially mosquitoes that like to be in natural environments, things like ditches and puddles, and they tend to be malaria tends to be a rural disease. Well, this very dangerous new invasive comes, like I said, it comes from Asia, but it has a very distinct different behavior. And it also oviposits, that means it dumps its eggs into containers like tires. So when I found an Anopheles mosquito in a tire, I thought, wow, maybe this is we should see if this is in fact an Anopheles stephensii. So I sent it to my research partners. They ran this brand new AI over this mosquito, and with success, they said, yes, this looks to be an Anopheles stephensii. But this is still very preliminary information. We have some caveats on it, and we need to actually do genetic analysis, PCR analysis to confirm. But I just want to show you that this is cutting edge science, and you can connect your students with the Mosquito Habitat Mapper to some really cool resources that we're developing now that will help them learn more about computer literacy and the development of artificial intelligence. So stay tuned for that. These are the 4 steps in the app where you identify, you just press a button and say, yes, I found this mosquito in a tire. Do you want to sample and count? You can always say, no, I'm done, but you can actually take a water sample. You can count the larva, you can record that. And then we ask you to, if you want to, you don't have to, you can stop at any step, but we also have a key provided so you can identify whether or not that mosquito might be a Culex or an Aedes mosquito or an Anopheles mosquito. But no matter which step you end up, whether you end at 1 or 2 or 3, you always do step 4. And there you're asked, are you able to eliminate this breeding habitat from use? Can you dump out the water? Can you throw away the trash? Can you cover the barrel? And we're collecting that data as well. And this is one reason why people that work in vector-borne disease are so excited about this app. So I just wanted to give you a couple more screenshots. I think this is more than you need, but just to show you that this is how all our apps work the same on Globe Observer. First, you find the latitude and longitude automatically using your device. Then you decide what kind of container you find, and then you look at that container and you identify it. In the next step, do you want to actually collect these mosquitoes and look at them, yes or no? And then what is really cool is that if you take a picture of a mosquito and you decide you want to identify it, that picture shows up in the key. So you can then compare that long breathing tube there to these pictures. You could say, yes, it's a mosquito, or no, it's not. And so it's pretty easy to use. And so here's just some examples of some of the pictures. You can look at the diagrams, you can look at actual photographs, you can photograph. This is a little clip-on microscope you can get from your favorite online store. They cost between $5 and say $8. So they're very inexpensive, and they turn any phone into a macro lens camera that allows you to get that incredible detailed photos that we need. And then last, dump out the water. And here's just the last thing, and this relates back to what Angie was saying about how we really need to understand all those variables, all those environmental variables that tell us about why mosquitoes want to live there. And this is part of our understanding of the Earth as a system. You know, mosquitoes are relating, as we saw in the video, to soil moisture, to precipitation, to humidity, and to plant cover and land cover. And so we are asking people using the Mosquito Habitat Mapper to, when they finish, you have a choice to make a land cover observation. And this is the land cover app. All you do is it works the same way, but you take 6 pictures, just like you do with clouds, up, down, north, south, east, and west, and you're done. And this data is incredibly useful for AI, for understanding about mosquito habitats, for understanding climate change and the way that mosquitoes are relating to all those variables. So Angie has already shown you all these and given you links to all these materials we have, but we're very proud of the resources that have been developed by this very clever team we have here. And I also wanted to show you that if you are interested in using the app, there is a special series of resources. They're called Mosquito Larvae Hunters 1 and 2. And in one, the students are led through determining whether or not they see a mosquito or one of the several kinds of imposters they might find in the water. And in the second one, they actually walk through each step of using the app with these beautiful illustrations. And when you're done, they can get a badge. So I want to thank you so much for listening to me today, talking about Mosquito Habitat Mapper, which is a topic that I really love. And I would love to be, I would very much love to hear from any of you. You'll have access to, I'm going to put my email in the chat here for you, for both Cassie and myself. Cassie is the director. I'm sorry, I guess it's called a campaign coordinator, but I think of her as my boss. She's the campaign coordinator for the Globe Mission Mosquito campaign. And we do have monthly webinars and lots of resources for you to look at. Angie, I hope I didn't take too much time, dear, but I get going and I can't stop. So thank you so much for giving me this chance to talk to this audience.
No, thank you. That was great. And we did have Mike Jabot asked, would you be willing to share your slides?
Absolutely.
So,
yes, I will do that.
Great.
Okay, I will definitely do that.
Does anyone have any questions? Pat Monteith, I might not have said that correctly.
You said it correctly. Thank you. Okay, so I live in Eastern Massachusetts. How serious an issue is this in Eastern Massachusetts?
That is a very good question. And yes, in Massachusetts, you do have, actually most of the states now, but particularly in the Northeast, we see a lot of West Nile virus. And West Nile virus is a disease that comes from Africa. And it is actually a disease that can be shared and propagated by our native species are able to transmit it. And so, yes, it is a problem. There are several diseases in the US that show up periodically that are really quite dangerous. Besides West Nile virus, we have Eastern equine encephalitis. That's also something that we see a lot on the East Coast and in the Midwest. There's the St. Louis encephalitis. So there's a number of these diseases. They are not very common, not in the same way that in Africa. I just read that 3 out of every 6 people that go to hospital in Kenya for malaria. So it's not quite that bad, but you do want to protect yourself, and your local mosquito vector control agencies are trying to make sure that the mosquitoes that cause this disease are controlled through their actions. So I hope that's a good answer.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm actually going to be doing a program, a similar program to this, to some older adults through a OSHA lifelong learning program in about 3 weeks. So this could not have been any more better timed.
Oh, that's fast. That's really neat.
Pat, are you the one that's talking right now?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, no worries. Pat, I put my email in the chat, and go ahead and write me. I actually have worked with OSHA, and it's an incredible organization. And I've done Mosquito Habitat Mapper and land cover trainings actually at the OSHA Institute in Hawaii. So it'd be great to connect with you on that. I'd be happy to provide information or resources or anything that you might need.
Oh, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, I love the OSHA program, and I'm hoping to, when I work a little bit less, I hope to take a lot more of their courses, because it's fantastic what they're offering all around the country.
I'm just looking. I don't see any more questions, but feel free to email us. I will put my email in the chat as well. And I really appreciate everybody coming out tonight. And for those of you who might be watching the video, I hope that you enjoyed it.